Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here to the Launchpad and our live launch coverage of Starship Flight Test 8. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Zach, founder and host here at the Launchpad and here at TLP. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together, and it's so great to have so many of you already joining us for our live launch coverage. If you haven't yet or you did earlier, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. At the same time, click that like button. It's annoying to hear it, but it feeds the algorithm. And share out the stream and invite people to join us as we count down now just over 2 hours until liftoff of the eighth flight test of Starship. You're looking at live views from our very own TLP cameras down at Starbase, Texas, where we have a fully stacked Starship ready to fly here today. It is a bit hazy down there. We've been monitoring the weather all day. Looks like wind is something we might be watching a little bit here, but we're hoping that wind maybe will blow some more of this fog out of the area as we get closer to that targeted T0. Currently, teams are targeting 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for liftoff. They do have a 1-hour launch window for today. They do have a little bit longer, actually, in that within their flight restrictions and everything, and that's because they want to bring Super Heavy back to the launch site. And that's something that's going to be really interesting as Starship continues to grow and evolve and become fully and rapidly reusable, as these launch windows will become space windows basically, because they will be launch and recovery, and that'll be really interesting to see. We were talking about it with our team on what it would look like for the first reflight of Starship, so definitely take some time, join us on the TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out in between streams. We'd love to see you in there, trying to do some more community hangouts in there and just talk about all of the exciting things that are happening in space. We got lots of people tuning in, though, from all over the world, and it's great to have so many of you joining us here. Aditya's on Earth. That is awesome. We got Amadi in Nigeria, Africa. Welcome. It's great to have you here. We see Ben is watching from the UK as well. Fantastic. Thanks for being here. I know we also see Arkansas. I see Florida, Oregon. Tony is watching from Cardiff, Wales. Welcome. Jerry is in Los Alamos, California. Adam, thank you so much for becoming a suborbital explorer there. Appreciate that support. Helen's watching from the UK. Great to have you here as well. Now, as always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and I'll work on answering those live to the best of my ability while we go through the stream. First and foremost, a big shout out to all of our mods that are in the chat. Thank you so much for helping keep the chat a friendly place and a place for everyone to ask questions. I know we got Lewis, we got David, we got Amy, we've got Matt, and it's great having you guys on there. We've also got Nightbot, new and improved, and we're excited to have all of you here with us in the chat. Now, we are expecting SpaceX to go live about 40 minutes prior to liftoff, but we'll be seeing fueling operations begin before that. The go-no-go from the launch director to begin fueling will happen at 1 hour, 15 minutes on the clock, and then ship load will begin at the 45-minute mark. We'll have confirmation of that by seeing some of the venting happen around the tower, but also SpaceX will be beginning just a few minutes later. Over that course of time, they will begin loading liquid oxygen and liquid methane onto both the first and second stage of Starship, and hopefully the fog will clear by then. We'll get to see the amazing increase of the frost lines on the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle. On board today, it's a test mission. The payload is data, but for the second time, there is actually a payload. On board today are 4 Starlink satellites, demos, that they are going to attempt to deploy in a suborbital trajectory following Starship back down into the Indian Ocean by Australia to just prove that they can do that. But we have to get there first. If you remember back to Flight 7, we didn't get that far. Starship made it all the way to Turks and Caicos in the Eastern Caribbean after an anomaly on the second stage. The Super Heavy booster was recovered during that, but it kind of seemed a little, we caught a booster, second time in history, but Starship exploded. So we're hoping to see a much more successful mission here today. They have done a lot of improvements onto the ship and the booster for today's flight, and that's why we want to hear from you guys. We have the poll in the chat. How do you think the flight is going to go? Do you think we're going to see a Starship splash and a booster catch? Do you think we're going to see, similar to the last flight, a Starship RUD and a booster catch? Do you think we're going to see both of the vehicles splashed? Does the booster not attempt a tower catch today? Or do you think other? So you can take a moment, let us know in the chat there. We'll read out some of your guys' responses here as we count down now just under 2 hours and counting until liftoff here today. If things go well, reports are saying the Flight 9 will hopefully be the first catch attempt of the ship, and then possibly 10 or 11 seeing the first reflight of a ship, booster, or the combination of the two. Elon does believe that they will recover and refly a vehicle this year, and that would be an amazing step forward for the Starship launch program. Catching up on your guys' messages in the chat. If you're sending in questions, make sure you're sending those in by taking us at the launch pad. It makes it a little bit easier for me to be able to catch those questions coming in, but I will keep an eye there. If you want to totally derail me, send it in as a super chat. That's how you get your question answered next, but we try to answer every question that comes in the chat, and we're glad to have you all here. Armored, do you know the mission plan for this flight? We just went over a little bit that they're going to try to deploy those 4 Starlink satellites. They're going to attempt to do an in-flight engine reflight test, and then ultimately the big part is the re-entry. Starship launching, we kind of seem to know how to do. Yes, last flight was the first flight of a version 2 upper stage, or the Starship stage. So this will be the second flight, and hopefully the first time they will successfully re-enter one of those. As always, they have the incredible Starlink on board that is set to give incredible views all the way through the flight, and we'll be staying live all the way through whatever happens at any point in the flight. So make sure you're staying with us after launch through the coast phase and hopefully re-entry. If you're just joining us, though, we are now under 2 hours and counting till the launch of Starship. You're looking at live views from Starbase, Texas. The chopsticks, a little harder to see, but they are open, ready for today's flight. The pad is cleared, the beach is closed, the road's been closed for hours, the evacuation zones are in effect, TFRs, marine hazards, flight restrictions, all are active as well. Everything continuing to tick towards that on-time liftoff in just under an hour and 57 minutes from now. Alpha, did you see the balloon, Zach? I missed this one, but it doesn't surprise me that they are setting off weather balloons. That's one of many things that we see used even out here at Cape Canaveral. They still use those weather balloons from time to time. We saw that a lot with Artemis and stuff, so wouldn't surprise me that they have those there. Lots of people just jumping on as well. We got, I'm going to butcher your name and I apologize. Jiraj, I'm hoping, from Slovakia. Welcome. And Mahil from India. It's 3 a.m. Well, good early morning. I hope you have some coffee. Thanks so much for jumping on here. SR7 is watching from the UK. Tubby's watching from Saskatchewan. Great to see another Canadian in the chat. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We got Ed watching in Kentucky. Jedi Masters in Titusville. I still don't know what we're called living here in Titusville. Is it Titusvillians? Let me know in the chat. Adam is watching from the UK. Toe is watching in Greece. Paolo is in the Netherlands. Mark's in Fresno. Anthony in Idaho. Byron's in New Zealand. Tube is in Toronto. King Wolf is in Northern Ontario. UK, Jordan, Nigeria, Florida, and more planet Earth. It's great to see all of you here with us today. Now I'm going to be jumping on and giving commentary updates on and off throughout the next hour or so as we get closer to that liftoff window. Once we get to that point that we have that confirmation of propellant loading, we'll be giving full commentary all the way through, so you can keep sending in those questions by taking us at the launch pad, and I'll keep working on answering those. As I said, we're going to take a very quick commentary break. We are at T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes and counting to the launch of Starship on Flight 8. Stay with us right here on the launch pad. And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are at T-minus 90 minutes and counting to liftoff of Starship Flight 8 from an incredibly foggy Starbase, Texas. Nope, we're not at Vandenberg. We are at Southern Texas on the Gulf of America, and we are now just 15 minutes away from that go, no-go for propellant loading. If you haven't yet, take a moment, send those questions in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Let us know in the chat also where you're watching from. I did know that someone had asked actually about a balloon earlier, and I expected you to be asking about a weather balloon, but actually I realized you were probably talking about the aerostat balloon in South Padre for this. We haven't been able to really verify it ourselves, but the journalist Ellie in Space has been kind of tweeting from the rooftop at Margaritaville, I believe she's at, and she said the aerostat balloon in South Padre Island has broken away. It hit a transformer power line and has caused a temporary power outage. The balloon broke off and has blown away. The winds out here are no joke. That is from her tweet on social media. From it, one of our teams went and looked up. There are reports of a localized power outage that looks like it's going to take them 3 or 4 hours. The expected time of restorement of that power. So that's kind of the only verification we've been able to do of that. But yeah, some wind down there, some fog down there. We haven't had any updates from SpaceX really at this time. Other than that, we're continuing through this. We are seeing ground venting. The tank farm is getting spooled up in preparation for that go, no go of propellant loading. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on as much as we can. We've got the big camera, our best camera, punched in at the top of Starship. That's where we can kind of get the most visibility right now. And then above me, we do have one of our wide shots here, giving you kind of a general idea. But on top of the tank farm, adding more clouding to the area. Very, very thick weather out on the Space Coast here today. I actually could zoom out one of our cameras here. We might do that for a brief moment just to give you an idea of what we're looking at when we really zoom it out for it. It is just completely socked in for weather. You can see some of the boats moving around, but normally if you've been on our 24/7 screen, you've seen how clear this view is, and it is really just closed in around Starbase here today, but we're hopeful that it will clear out in time for liftoff. They do have a 1-hour launch window for today, so if for any reason they need to hold, they should be able to do so, and we'll hopefully start to get some updates from SpaceX here in the near future, as we're just over about 12 minutes away from when they should be conducting that go, no-go for propellant loading of Starship. Catching up on your guys' comments in the chat. Ted makes a good point. The last RUD in the fog, we saw nothing except raining chunks of the ship. That is true. SN-11, I believe, is the only Starship to have ever launched in thick, heavy, dense fog, kind of similar to this. And yeah, we saw a glow of it going up, and then we didn't see much else other than very large chunks descending around some of the cameras that were in the area that day. So hopefully, I mean, you can see even our main camera, it's going kind of in and out of focus there. That's not the camera refocusing. That's the fog getting thicker in between our camera and the launch site. So it's interesting to see this, and we'll navigate it to the best of our ability. Of course, we're going to patch in SpaceX's live feed once they begin as well, so we'll have their close-up cameras and hopefully be able to have a little bit of a better, closer-up view to break through some of the fog as we get ever closer to that targeted launch window here this afternoon. We're going to take another very quick commentary break, but you guys send in your questions in the chat. I will be back in about 10 minutes when we're expecting that go, no go for propellant loading. And at that point, we will dive deeper into our full commentary countdown to launch coverage. So we are now just 1 hour, 25 minutes, 25 seconds away from liftoff of Starship on Flight Test 8. Stay with us. And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now less than an hour till the targeted liftoff of Starship. We've had confirmation of pad vent, tower vent, and we are expecting that SpaceX is now go for propellant loading at this time. We are, of course, waiting for SpaceX to give us confirmation of that via social media, and once they begin their live coverage, we will, of course, patch them in as well. Now, it is continuing to get foggier and foggier, it seems, so we had a slight solution, try to help you guys see it a little bit better on what you're looking at. So if we're just going to take our Starship sticker from the shop, and we're just going to put that there. That is the two views, roughly proportionate on what is happening right now, and hopefully the views will clear up here, that we're actually able to see the booster as we get closer to the liftoff period. But at this point, this is kind of the best option that we've got. We're hopeful that we'll at least get a clear, and I mean, the moment that they lift off, we know that it's going to clear off, because it'll just burn all the fog away with Starship launching there. We'll even fog out the sticker a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty decent. If you want to grab one of our Starship full stack stickers, head over TLP Network. The launchpad.store. You can go to tlpnetwork.com and click on the shop button, and you can pick one of those up, put it on your car, your laptop, whatever you want to do. And they're a nice detailed sticker there for you. But we're glad to have you joining us here. As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat, tagging us at the launch pad. We're glad to have you here. We did also have more confirmation about that surveillance blimp that ripped away, causing that power outage. More confirmation of it, even to the point Everyday Astronaut had to turn on generators for their broadcast as their power outage was going to not have enough power for their stream. So definitely some things being affected down on the the South Padre Island side, Starbase, obviously, it's on the other side of the bay and the inlet for the port, and a few miles south, so it is on a different power system than the island, but just a little update that we've been watching there. But as always, answering your guys' comments and questions while we follow along. We are now 55 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting till launch. We should be having propellant load begin in about 10 minutes time, and that will be kick off with ship LOX load at 45 minutes, 59 seconds, and counting, followed 3 minutes later by ship fuel load. After that, about a minute and a half later, booster fuel load will begin, followed 6 minutes later by booster LOX load. Then over the next 25 minutes, they'll fill them up, and then they will begin the Raptor engine chill on both the booster and the ship. But we still got steps to get to that point. We have to have a confirmation from SpaceX of go for prop load, or we're going to hopefully have a visual confirmation of that, and then of course we will patch SpaceX in the moment that they do go live with some of their closer up shots here as we continue towards this. SpaceX did say they were going to go live roughly 40 minutes prior to liftoff, so that should just be a couple of minutes after they begin loading the first bit of liquid oxygen. So we're hopeful that they'll maintain to that and be able to have a look at what they are doing. Lemon curd, it's so weird how it looks like it's floating. I don't have the full sticker of the launch tower. I'll work on that for next time, that we can have the full sticker with the launch site and everything. Ross, note the sneaky but clever workaround. Thanks, Zach. I'm glad you like it. It's just a little foggy out there. We might have to start doing this at Vandenberg as well, and just start putting outlines of rockets since we can't see it. ET says has to be an S word with the weather like this. So believe it or not, Starship can launch in fog and it can launch in wind. The concern is that the wind may be exceeding the flight restriction, not curriculum. You know what I mean. For what is allowed. So there's a set number that they can't exceed in sustained, or a set number they can't exceed in gusts of wind, and that's where we have the concern. I mean, if it ripped a surveillance balloon off its tether, there are some very strong gusts in the area, and they definitely don't want to risk having a Starship there. Phantom, it's a little too pointy. That is fair. It might be a little pointy there. The earlier ones were pointy. Let's go with that. Catching up on your guys' questions in the chat. Can we add flames? Well, we haven't had ignition yet, so not yet. We'll be keeping an eye on it. Constraint. Thank you, David. Constraint. That's the word I was looking for. Appreciate it. As we are 52 minutes, 13 seconds and counting to launch, the seagulls are going crazy on the right side of your screen. Stay with us as we continue to count down to the launch of Starship Flight 8, awaiting confirmation of propellant loading in just a few minutes. Stay with us. And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are coming down to L minus 45 minutes, 10 seconds and counting till the historic 8th flight test of Starship. SpaceX has begun their live coverage, and we will listen into them in just a moment as we count down the final 45 minutes till liftoff. We have had a go for propellant loading confirmed by SpaceX. They also updated their timeline, officially now targeting 5:45 p.m. Central Time. That's 15 minutes into their 1-hour launch window. We're also hearing some rumblings. We might get a little bit more information about the future of Starship here in Florida during today's broadcast. There looks to have been a SpaceX update that got posted on the website and immediately removed, probably because their live stream was pushed back because the launch was delayed a little bit. So hopefully we will see that at some point during today's broadcast on what the future of Starship will look like here on the Space Coast. But if you haven't yet, take a moment, share out the stream, invite people to join us. We're hoping the fog clears so we can provide you guys live views from our cameras on board the during on the liftoff here today. But if not, we will of course have SpaceX's live feed available for you as well. As always, though, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live to the best of our ability while we continue through the broadcast here today. We're expecting SpaceX to get underway here in just a couple of minutes. But if it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad here at TLP. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we'll be taking you all the way through from launch to landing of the booster, hopefully in those big, beautiful arms at Starbase, all the way to Starship splashdown near Australia, and everything in between. We'll be answering your guys' comments and questions a little bit leading up to launch, but we'll have that longer coast phase during this mission that we'll be answering those as well, so we hope that you will stay with us for that. Some big milestones on board for today's flight: a reignition of the engines in low Earth orbit to prove that they'd be able to actually, well, they won't be in low Earth orbit. They'll be up, but suborbital trajectory, but igniting their engines to prove they can. 4 Starlink demos are going to be deployed while still on a suborbital trajectory to prove out that system on Starlink, as well as, obviously, the biggest test: can Starship's special heat shield tiles survive re-entry? This was the first generation of them. You can see a full one behind me, but will these pieces of special material make Starship survive re-entry and splashdown? This would be the first ever V2 vehicle to make it all the way to re-entry and through re-entry. It's the first V2, didn't make it past the Gulf of America, and we'll have to see what happens here today. But we're waiting for SpaceX to get underway, as we are now at L minus 42 minutes and counting. And with that, we should have confirmation that both ship liquid oxygen and ship liquid methane are now being loaded onto the vehicle. We should also, in about 30 seconds, have the liquid methane begin loading onto the super heavy booster. For today's flight, SpaceX is using Starship 34 and Booster 15 for today's mission. As I said, on board also are those 4 Starlink simulators. They're similar size and weight to the next generation of Starlink satellites that will be used on Starship, and they will fly on a suborbital trajectory and splash down in the Indian Ocean along with the ship. We are hearing that they should have some incredible camera views as usual, thanks to Starlink, and possibly some new camera angles for showing that demonstration of that Starlink deployment. L minus 41 minutes, 6 seconds, and counting. And SpaceX is beginning their live coverage here. They always have an incredible hype video at the start of these streams, and we will turn it over to SpaceX Mission Control in just a moment to listen in for an update on the count. We'll sync our countdown clock with theirs as well. So we're at L minus 40 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting till liftoff from SpaceX Starbase of Starship Flight Test 8. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, and invite people to join us for watching history. Again, if it's your first time here, though, here at the launch pad, we bring you full live launch coverage, space news updates, in-space trackers, moon landing coverage, and more, because we do believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you here. Coming down to L 40 minutes, let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control for an update on the count as we inch ever closer to the 8th flight test of Starship.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 8th flight test of Starship. What a gorgeous view there on your screen from Starbase, Texas. It is currently 5:05 p.m. Central Time here, and we are looking forward to tonight's launch of the world's most powerful rocket. I'm Kate Tice, Senior Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX.
And I'm Dan Hewitt with SpaceX Communications. Welcome to our first ever broadcast from Starbase's new Star Factory building. I've been waiting a while to say that. Super excited. We are just a little over 39 minutes away and counting down to a liftoff at 5:45 p.m. Central Time today.
Yeah, and if you were wondering, yes, that is the pad just behind us. Now, just over 1 month ago, we saw the second ever tower catch of the Super Heavy booster there at that pad, and that was also the first ever flight of the next generation of ship, which successfully lit all 6 Raptor engines and flew for several minutes before contact was lost.
That's right. We completed our investigation following that mission, made a number of hardware operational changes for today's flight. We're going to detail all of those in just a few minutes. Important to remember, though, progress in a developmental program like this one, it's not always linear. There's no comparison, though, for putting that flight hardware in a flight environment to learn as fast as possible. And as always, primary payload for Starship flight test campaign is data.
The objectives for today's flight will look very similar to Flight 7. We're planning to deploy simulated Starlink satellites and fly a range of experiments. We've moved a number of tiles from ship. We've removed a number of tiles from the ship for reentry testing. We will also intentionally be stressing the flaps during reentry so we can test the limits of ship before we get ready to attempt future ship catches. So lots of new testing happening today, and as always, excitement is definitely guaranteed.
And just checking on things at the pad real quick as we're under 38 minutes away. We are tracking to 5:45 p.m. Central Time liftoff. We've got a window all the way to 6:30 p.m. We have started prop load. You'll start to see those frost lines building up on both Super Heavy and Starship. We're not tracking any technical issues, any range issues, any weather issues from a launch at that 5:45 p.m. mark. So we are loading prop on the vehicles, looking good for a launch in just a little over 37 minutes. Now, let's meet today's vehicle on the pad. It's the world's biggest rocket, Starship.
Yeah, you see it there on your screen, but to get an even better sense of how big Starship is, let's start with the average size human, which is about 2 meters high, or a little over 6 feet. Towering over our human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket, which is has the payload fairing attached, is double the height of the Millennium Falcon at 70 meters. And twice nearly the size of that is the fully stacked Starship, just over 123 meters tall. The ship is about 52 meters tall, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands at about 71 meters. So it's pretty big. And we do have plans to make the ship and booster even taller in the future, if you can imagine.
And Starship itself features 2 major parts. We've got ship, that's the fully reusable upper stage powered by 6 Raptor engines. And then we have the Super Heavy booster that's fully reusable first stage with 33 of those Raptor engines powering it. Super Heavy, the most powerful rocket ever flown. It's designed to launch, return, refuel, launch again with 0 refurb. And to make all of that happen, we also have Stage 0. That's everything else you see around it that enables Starship to fly. The tower, the orbital launch mount, quick disconnects, prop farm, everything. Stage 0 is also just as critical to achieving that rapid reuse as Starship itself.
Back on the rocket, the ship features 6 Raptors, 3 of them for sea-level engines and 3 for vacuum engines. Raptor Vacuum, or RVAC, is a similar design to the Raptor engine, but features a larger exhaust section and a larger expansion nozzle to maximize the engine's efficiency in space. It's also designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface, useful for when you're taking off from a place like Mars that's still waiting for its first launch tower.
And that ship is outfitted with 4 flaps that are used to control the vehicle's attitude during subsonic flight and to enable a precision landing. The 2 upper ones are right here. And then to achieve full reusability, the ship has to survive entry not just once, but multiple times every single time we send it up and bring it back. It does that with its heat shield, which we iterate on every single flight as we're just building towards a heat shield that requires no refurbishment. The one today, it's still composed of those thousands of hexagonal ceramic tiles, and they're designed to insulate the vehicle during that atmospheric reentry where some of those temperatures spike up as high as about 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That's one of the real big things we're still working on. Rapidly reusable heat shield has never existed in history, so just continuously improving on it right now is just a key focus for all of these flight tests.
And then there in between the first and second stages is our hot stage. We saw that in action first starting on Flight 2. The hot staging maneuver is when the upper stage engines are ignited before the booster engines are completely cut off. With hot staging, the rocket never stops accelerating during separation. So it's actually more efficient than traditional stage separation, even though it sounds kind of crazy. You actually see it there on your screen now. That is one of the upgrades that we made on Flight 2, thanks to lessons that we learned on Flight 1. Several of the improvements and upgrades made for today's flight will unlock our ability to fly longer missions, something that we'll want to start doing, as we start doing orbital flights around Earth, and of course, eventually to Mars.
And ship definitely had a lot of lessons learned on Flight 7, but Super Heavy Booster put on one hell of a show for our second ever return to launch site and catch. Marked our first reflight of hardware, shout out Engine 314, and it brought us a lot closer to full reuse. For more on that, get ready, Internet. We're going to be joined now by our buddy Chris out in Hawthorne. How's it going, Chris?
And thank you, Dan, and I couldn't agree more. Raptor 134 definitely started us down that path toward rapid reusability for the Raptor engines, and who knows, maybe we'll see it again. Stay tuned. Welcome, everyone, to Hawthorne, California. As you can hear, excitement is building as we count down to Starship's 8th flight test. Behind me, you can see one of our mission control rooms where engineers here in Hawthorne are assisting our flight control teams in Starbase, keeping an eye on various systems like Starship's avionics and, of course, those powerful Raptor engines that have quite a workout ahead of them today. Now, the Raptor engines you'll see and definitely hear today were manufactured right here in Hawthorne, California. And the engines on today's flight are all Raptor 2 engines, which is the same design we've been using for Starship's flight tests to date. And that includes all of the engines that have powered the 2 Super Heavy boosters back to Starbase for catch and recovery by Mechazilla. But here at SpaceX, we like to continuously improve our designs by eliminating the parts we don't need. We call this applying the algorithm, and that helps us simplify designs and drives us toward rapid, reliable reuse. And that's just what we're doing with our Raptor engines, like you can see here on your screen. I love this family photo of the Raptors because it really shows you the unprecedented step forward in rocket design that Raptor 3 is. And you can really tell that we applied the algorithm here, questioning the requirements for the engine, finding the parts we didn't need, and then optimizing for manufacturability and reuse. Now, one of the cool things about Raptor 3 is that it eliminates the large and heavy engine heat shields, which means that when we move from the Raptor 2 to the Raptor 3 engines on Starship, each Raptor 3 engine is going to save us about 1.1 metric tons of mass, and that's a lot of mass when you multiply that by 39 or more engines. So Raptor 3 will help us increase Starship's efficiency and as well as the amount of mass that Starship is able to deliver to space. And I got to say, personally, it's really exciting to be looking at the engine that will make life multiplanetary, beginning with Mars. But before we get to Mars, we still have a lot of important and critical development work to do. And it's flight tests like today's that help us do just that. So as we get ready for Flight 8, let's take a look back at last month's Flight 7.
And if you're just joining us, welcome. We are at L-30 minutes, 50 seconds, and counting till launch of Starship Flight 8 from Starbase, Texas. See lots of people just jumping in the chat. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream. It was awesome seeing Chris now on air with SpaceX there after many years of him providing coverage. So cool to see that. And we're excited to see what else we get to see during today's broadcast here. Some incredible recap footage from Flight 7 on how what we expect to see here in about 30 minutes time. It was a much nicer looking day just a few weeks ago when Flight 7 launched. We've got a foggy day on Florida on the right, or on Florida, in Texas. On the right side of your screen are 2 live views of Starbase, where it is completely fogged out right now. Really, the only cameras that have shots are right there at the pad, but we're still hopeful. We got 30 minutes. Hopefully some of that fog will burn off just in time for us to see it. I think in the top right one, you're starting to see a little bit of an outline of the ship there as we are well into propellant loading. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. I've been trying to catch those and answer them. And if you haven't yet, take a moment, engage the like button, and share out the stream. Really does help us out, and we appreciate your guys' support in doing so. But as see here, the return of Super Heavy through the clouds, piercing through to Starbase. This is what we hope to see later today, about 35 minutes or so from now. Remember, the Super Heavy booster is programmed to default to the Gulf of America. If it comes back to the launch tower, both mission controllers have to authorize it, and the ship itself has to give itself a go and basically divert to the launch site as it's still a testing program. This is to help save the launch site in case there were any issues with the booster itself and being able to communicate with it, that it will only come back to the tower if it is told, yes, it's safe to do so, and it verifies that as well. If not, we will see a splashdown. The ship will continue on its journey through a coast phase, Starlink deployment, engine relight test, and then the biggest test, re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Again, this is a suborbital mission. This time, we're not going orbital yet, but the latest FAA launch license did introduce the word orbit, which means it is something that we are hopeful to see here this year. Let's listen back into SpaceX Mission Control.
My hands got sweaty again in excitement watching that, and in anticipation knowing that we're going to hopefully get to experience booster catch again. I know seeing my first booster catch, I'll never forget.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Nothing on the planet.
Now, using the data from Flight 7, we've made some key improvements under the hood for today. Flight 7 taught us a couple of important things that changed some of our pre-flight testing to help us investigate more. First, we saw a harmonic response several times stronger in flight than we saw in testing.
And harmonic response, in this case, it's essentially vibrations that we're seeing go through the structure. Rocket engines, as you can imagine, create an incredible amount of noise and vibration, which then passes through every component of that rocket. And on Flight 7, we saw those vibrations happening at a very specific frequency, and they were placing some extra stress on that hardware in Starship's propulsion system. This is most likely what led to propellant leaks that we saw that eventually cascaded into fires and ultimately ended with loss of contact with the ship.
As part of our investigation, our team at Starbase took this flight's ship through a 60-second static fire on the Starship test stand, which is 10 times longer than any previous static fire. During this test, we cycled through multiple throttle levels. In fact, you can see that on your screen now. We cycled through multiple throttle levels on the engines to recreate different conditions seen within the propulsion system during flight. And we tested some hardware changes on fuel feed lines to the Raptor vacuum engines.
This gave us just the extra data that we needed to eventually implement new hardware that's installed in those fuel feed lines for the RVAC, the Raptor vacuum engines. Also tweaked a couple of other things like the temperature of the propellant as we're feeding it to the engines. Also the throttle level that we set for those engines during ascent. Having the ability to do a 60-second static fire, just one of the ways we're trying to expand our test capabilities here at Starbase. You want to test like you fly as much as possible. That just helps us to iterate even faster.
Yeah, exactly. The fuel feed lines to the Raptor vacuum engines, which are unique to this upgraded version of ship, look like large straws running through the oxygen tank. Today's vehicle has one of the hardware configurations we tested in that extended static fire because it showed it was able to minimize the harmonic response and lower its amplitude or strength.
We also took another look at where those fires broke out, specifically in what we call the attic. That's an unpressurized space between just the bottom of the ship's liquid oxygen tank and the top of those engine heat shields. Fires in that space resulted in a loss of vehicle back on Flight 2 and also on Flight 7. So we took some steps to make it more resilient to leaks in the future. To do that, we added a pretty hefty purge system. It's going to use gaseous nitrogen. It's pretty similar to the CO2, the carbon dioxide system we use on booster. It essentially just floods the zone with an inert gas to prevent a fire from ever starting. And then in addition to this, we increase the attic's natural fire defense just by adding some additional vent holes. That helps to keep the attic pressure as close to just vacuum as humanly possible as Starship flies into space.
And for the next generation of ship, we're running the algorithm. We're going to try and do the next best possible thing and delete some of the unnecessary space. So that ship will be using Raptor 3 engines, which will let us reduce the attic volume and eliminate the majority of joints that can leak into the space. In the end, what you're seeing take place with these changes is the core of our test program. We fly hardware all together in a real-world environment. We learn from the data, we make upgrades, and then we fly again. Ultimately, we fly to learn, and we're learning a lot.
That's right. Now, for today's flight test, we're going to be attempting to do everything we didn't get to do on Flight 7. We're still looking to get our first re-entry with this upgraded version of ship. Also intentionally trying to stress it to gather real-world data on just where the vehicle's boundaries are. So don't be surprised if it's not a smooth flight down to a landing for ship today. As always, it's going to start with liftoff. The 33 Raptor engines on super heavy igniting, lifting both it and Starship into its ascent, and it's going to power us all the way until hot staging.
Yeah, those engines on the ship will ignite while the ship is still attached to the booster. This will create that stage separation that we see there. Second stage will continue to go on its way. The booster will make a flip and come back here to the launch tower just behind Dan and I for hopefully what we will see the third ever booster catch.
Meanwhile, ship continues its ascent, gets into its suborbital place in space. We're going to have a test satellite deploy, pew-pew, Starlink's firing out. And then we're also going to do a Raptor relighting one of those sea-level engines before we get to ship re-entry.
Troubleshoot by the state machine.
And the ship will continue through, make its entry phase that lasts for a few minutes.
And if some comms did just go out, we heard that an operator hold got in, so they are troubleshooting one issue. As we continue to move through prop load, we'll get some more details on what caused the hold, and if we start to reset to a new T0. We are still loading prop on the vehicle, so essentially putting that hold in means that if we get through everything and we hit that T-minus 40-second mark, we'll hold there and wait to clear the issue if we haven't cleared it at some point in the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, for those that are unfamiliar, that T-minus 40-second period is an opportunity to troubleshoot, unlike our Falcon timeline. So we do have a little bit of leeway.
Yeah.
Continuing on with today's plan, that ship will be making a soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean, as we have seen before. We are launching at 5:45 p.m. Today. This evening launch will allow us to have daytime views of the ship as it makes its splashdown. So,
yeah,
good news.
It's a lot on ship's plate, but we're still hyper-focused on finding all of those real-world limits of Starship. We want to be able to prepare to return ship to launch site and catch it. A lot of these recent upgrades are just made to enable that to actually happen.
Flight 7 premiered a huge block of upgrades to the upper stage to add more capability to Starship. And with Flight 8 today, we're hoping to get through a full flight. Starting us off, the forward flaps got a redesign. They shrunk in size and shifted toward the top of the vehicle and away from the heat shield. And that will significantly reduce their exposure to reentry heating. Also, by making Starship 2 meters taller, we added about 25% more propellant volume, along with propulsion upgrades such as vacuum jacketing of the feed lines, new fuel feed line system for Raptor vacuum engines, and an improved propulsion avionics module.
Yeah, ship got a little bit taller. That extra prop's going to allow us to fly those longer missions. We're not planning on stretching it a whole lot more beyond this in future ones, but then, you know, once we're flying the next version a lot, it'll be going. Just like the previous flight, a lot of tiles have been purposely removed. As again, we're trying to stress test all of the vulnerable areas, call this the missing tile test. Those tiles are removed in strategic locations all across the vehicle, including critical areas like those tanks. and over the flap seals as we use this flight to just really push those boundaries. In addition to that, we have some metallic tiles, again, that are being tested, including one on the right of this animation that has some active cooling built in.
The vehicle's avionics also underwent a complete redesign with things like 4 upgraded Starlink terminals, combining Starlink, global navigation, and RF communications. You can see that location there on your screen. And on the sides of the vehicle, non-structural versions of the ship's catch fittings are installed to test the thermal performance, along with a smoothed and tapered edge on one section of the tile line to address hotspots that we observed during Flight 6.
And once more, we're back at testing some radar sensors on those tower catch arms. We did that last flight. We're doing it again as we look for some additional ways to measure the distance between the arms and the vehicle. Catching the ship's going to be pretty different from catching the booster. It does that flip right before, so your antennas are going to rapidly reorient. And so just having any extra sensors on the ground side, you're adding extra layers of control while the ship and tower talk to each other for a catch.
In another first, Starship will deploy 4 Starlink simulators. They are similar in size to our next-generation Starlink satellites. With unparalleled payload capacity and full reusability, Starship will be able to deploy our more advanced V3 Starlink satellites, which will revolutionize global connectivity with Starlink all over again.
Each one of those Starlink V3 launches on a Starship is going to add about 60 terabits of capacity to the Starlink network. To give you some context, that's about 20 times the capacity of what we're adding with every V2 mini launch on a Falcon 9 right now. That's going to help us expand Starlink's network, expand its impact in the coming years as we expand that access to high-speed internet all around the world and eventually beyond. And the Starlink simulators that we're deploying today, they're going to be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship. We expect them to demise as they enter in the atmosphere. And then Starship's trajectory itself looks very similar to our last several flights, splashdowns targeted in the Indian Ocean. And on top of all of that, we're also going to relight a single Raptor engine again while in space. We're just trying to get data on in-space Raptor burns. You're going to need those for deorbit burns when we're doing orbital missions, and eventually when we're doing missions way beyond Earth and we're on our way to Mars.
Yeah, so just like you said earlier, Dan, there's a lot on Starship's plate for today. But one of the hallmarks of these Starship flights are the incredible views that we get throughout the flight, courtesy of Starlink. Every day, we're working to expand the Starlink network both on Earth and in space. For how all this connects us to the big mission, let's head back to Chris.
Thanks, Kate. And as fans of Starship may know that Starlink enables us to bring you a lot of those unprecedented views, both from space and on Earth. Personally, I love all those epic views of the plasma wrapping around Starship during re-entry. So thank you to our Starlink teams who enable all of those amazing views and the information we get. Now, in addition to the dozens of cameras on Starship itself, as you see on your screen here, we also have mobile Starlink camera kits deployed in the middle of the Indian Ocean, as you're seeing from a previous flight. Starlink also allows us to connect our aerial cinematography units on the ground at Starbase and at other strategic camera spots around Texas and the world. And that's all part of how it comes together to help us tell the incredible story of Starship, both on and off the planet. So thanks to Starlink, Starship is now capable of streaming more than 120 megabits per second of real-time, high-definition video and telemetry through every phase of flight. This not only provides those incredible views of reentry for all of us, but also the invaluable engineering data to help our engineers rapidly iterate across all systems of Starship. And all of that streaming data today will be put to good use with the more than 30 cameras that are on the vehicle for today's flight. Now, Starlink is the world's largest satellite constellation operating in low Earth orbit to deliver high-speed, low-latency broadband internet. This provides internet access to people around the world, many of whom have never had connectivity before. As of today, Starlink is serving more than 125 countries, territories, and other markets, and has more than 5 million active customers and counting. But to meet the growing global demand for high-speed internet, SpaceX recently expanded its factory at Bastrop, Texas, and introduced Starlink Mini as well as an upgraded version of the Starlink Standard kit. Here's our first ever look inside our brand new Bastrop facility.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now at L-minus 14 minutes, 6 seconds, and counting till liftoff. We'll patch SpaceX's feedback in here momentarily once they complete playing their beautiful copywritten music, but giving a great look into the development of Starlink, really a game changer in bringing on global internet connectivity. On the right side of your screen are 2 live views from Starbase, and it looks like the fog is just starting to break a tiny little bit. Let's hope it continues. Let's listen back into SpaceX Mission Control.
That technology, definitely a lot of good things to come from our Bastrop facility. And while we're talking about the infrastructure that enables us to do all of these amazing things, you've probably seen some changes recently around Starbase. Coming online this year is the second tower at Starbase, and this tower has redesigned chopsticks and is built to accommodate the next generation of Starship and Super Heavy. It will have a redesigned launch mount and flame diverter system built to be rapidly reusable and hardy enough to withstand hundreds of launches at a time. Now, over at the production site down the road, we're also building a new integration and refurbishment facility called Gigabay. And Gigabay, as the name implies, will allow us to process more Starships at the same time over our current Megabays. But Gigabay isn't just for Texas. If that weren't exciting enough, we're also further expanding Starship operations into Florida, bringing production and launch capabilities to the Space Coast. As Starship flight testing, development, and launch cadence continues to pick up pace at Starbase in Texas, over in Florida, we're building a Gigabay as well. Gigabay will stand 380 feet tall and will provide about 46.5 million cubic feet of interior processing space and about 815,000 square feet of workspace. Now, as environmental impact statements continue for potential Starship launches and flights from both Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center and Launch Complex 37 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, we plan to complete the Starship launch pad at Pad 39A this year. And pending the completion of environmental reviews, SpaceX intends to conduct the first Starship launch from Florida from Launch Pad 39A later this year. Now, we're also interested in enabling Starship launches from Slick 37. And as part of this process, SpaceX has been given a limited right of entry for Pad 37 to conduct further due diligence at the site in order to move forward with the environmental impact study that's being led by the Department of the Air Force. Ultimately, we will have production, integration, refurbishment, and launch facilities in both Florida and Texas, driving the needed flight rate for Starship to help make humanity a multiplanetary civilization. And Kate, I could talk about this stuff for literally hours on end, but we've got a Starship to launch today. So how are things looking 11 minutes before launch here?
Yeah, it's pretty cool that we're getting close to go time. Quick update on range and weather. For the range, the area around the pad has been well cleared. This includes the land, air, and sea space. So all is clear on the range front. That also applies to over in the Indian Ocean. The sea and airspace has been cleared as well for ships re-entry. Once again, we are making a soft splashdown in the Indian Ocean. So just the buoy cams are out there, and we'll get some great videos once again. Weather, we have a 35% chance of violating the weather the weather constraints for launch today. So it's not perfect, but it's not bad. Visibility also not so awesome. We can see the tower here. We're 2 miles away from the launch pad, but visibility around the greater area might be a little challenging.
Yeah. In terms of the vehicle itself, so right now you can see we're almost done loading prop on ship, almost done on booster. If you tuned in and heard earlier, we did hear talk about a flight controller hold going in. So just a reminder, all that means is we wouldn't be able to pass that T-minus 40-second mark. They're literally talking about it right now on the loops that they think they've got the problem figured out. It was an issue on the booster where we think we will be clear by about the T-minus 2-minute mark, and we will be able to move right through that T-minus 40, hopefully. So, prop load continuing. We're not holding or anything yet, and we're expecting that issue to clear before we get to that T-minus 40 mark. This morning, though, we did all of the usual checkouts, aligned the navigation systems, did all of our booster and ship tank purges, got them ready for prop load, chilled down the pad, which you can see all the cryo right now.
Chilling.
Things are pretty chilly out there. Prop load's been going. We just did a flap check out. We also do a wiggle check out on the chopstick arms as well. We are going to continue loading prop for about another 6 minutes. We're going to close ship at about 3 minutes, 20 seconds before launch, booster just about 30 seconds later. So we've had at least one issue that we're still working in the background, expecting that to clear before we hit that kind of that hold gate at T-minus 40 seconds, and looking good.
Yeah. So bottom line, things are looking good for liftoff here in just under 9 minutes. We're now at, looks like 8 minutes and 49 seconds. So everything's looking green so far.
Yeah. Before we get any closer to liftoff, I need to shamelessly plug Starbase. I'm one of just a couple thousand people who work here. Soon to be the newest city in Texas at Starbase, and we're the largest employer in the area. We're always hiring, so visit spacex.com/careers, see all the openings. It's where the future is being built, and it's a future we can all be pretty excited about. So yeah, come work here. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's launch a rocket.
All right, so we're coming up to 8 minutes until liftoff. As we mentioned before, flight controllers are already on console. They're located in our Ad Astra Launch Control Center, about 6 miles away from the pad. But they will soon be moving here with us to Star Factory. So a lot of excitement around that, certainly growing.
Yeah, and again, general status check. We're continuing to progress. We're under 8 minutes away. We're tracking an issue with booster. We're expecting that to clear. Still looking good for launch. Speaking of booster, let's talk about catching one.
Absolutely.
The tower's 2 giant robotic arms that lift and stack Starship on a Super Heavy for final integration ahead of flight. We also use those to catch. It means we don't have any landing legs in the booster. Makes the booster lighter. Means we can throw more payload into space.
Exactly. Following liftoff and after the 2 stages separate in flight, Super Heavy will return to the launch site, the same exact launch site that it lifted off from, reignite its engines to slow the vehicle down. Here we see playback from a previous booster catch. I believe that was our first booster catch. The vehicle will slow down, tower arms will come out and catch the booster.
And just like the last few times, literally thousands of different vehicle pad criteria have to be met before we bring a booster back and try to catch it. We need healthy systems on Super Heavy, on the launch tower, and we need that final manual command from the mission's flight director for the day. If that command isn't sent before we finish the boost back burn, or if any of those automated health checks kick us out, the booster defaults to a trajectory, takes it to a landing burn and a soft splashdown in the Gulf.
Yeah, we have said it multiple times before, but it still holds true today. We accept no compromises when it comes to ensuring the safety of the public and our team, and the return will only take place if the conditions are right, and there are many of them. So there's a chance that we may not get to catch the booster today.
Yeah, and one aspect of the return and the catch of that booster is the audible sonic boom in the area around the return location. That happens as the booster's slowing down from supersonic speeds. It's similar to sonic booms that were heard during the return and landing of NASA's space shuttle for anyone that was in Florida for those.
Sonic booms like these are unique to vehicles returning from space and are one of the hallmarks of reusable systems like our Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy vehicles. The general impact to those in the surrounding area of a sonic boom is basically a brief thunder-like noise. And I've heard sonic booms before, but I got to experience my first in-person Starship sonic boom on Flight 7, and I can confirm it's pretty fun to experience.
And as someone who has heard sonic booms many times in Florida, they are definitely a hallmark, and what a way to announce a returning space vehicle's return for reuse. Now, here in California, as you can imagine, the excitement is growing here. The crowd is growing. Kate mentioned our flight controllers in Ad Astra in Texas. Here in Hawthorne, we also have controllers on console in Mission Control, helping those teams in Texas monitor Starship's various systems, including the avionics and those 39 Raptor engines that were built right here in Hawthorne. Now, with 4 minutes, 30 seconds to go, Dan and Kate, how are we looking for a launch today?
So we are still looking good. We're just about fully topped out on propellant. on both vehicles. The closeout's going to be coming up in about a minute on ship, and then about 30 seconds later on the booster. We are still hearing chatter in the background about the booster issue that we're tracking. We may still be able to pass the hold, but if we need to hold at T-minus 40 seconds, we have several minutes that we can hang out there and work to just kind of troubleshoot those final issues before we get the go. Once we're fully loaded on prop, which is coming up soon, we've got just shy of 11 million pounds of liquid oxygen, liquid methane on both of those stages. And then once we're done, we're going to see that we're going to hear the ground lines do what's called pushback. So all of that propellant gets pushed out of those lines back to the tanks, clearing the pad for launch.
Now, in the next few minutes, the guidance system will perform a final alignment. The automated flight safety system will be armed, and thrust vector control, or TVC, checkouts will be performed. As we said, if we do need to hold, it would come at that T-minus 40-second mark. That is the point in the countdown where we can pause to wait for final checkouts or pressurization, or if we need to continue to work through that issue. So once we pass through that T-minus 40-second mark, a number of things are going to happen quite quickly. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure. The ship's going to go on to internal power. And after that, the quick disconnect, or QD, arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction shortly after T0. And once we do pass that T-minus 40 seconds, we still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to that T-minus 40 seconds and hold there to assess what happened, and if we can proceed again to T0. But that's only in certain situations.
All right, so we're just about 2.5 minutes away. We do have a couple of things, like if we hit T-minus 10 seconds and you see water start flowing out of the deflector, that is a reason for us to scrub for the day, is that's once it's turned on, it doesn't turn off, and then we'll have to refill the tanks on both the water farm and the prop farm. Our team's gotten really, really good at refilling stuff really quick, so we can reposition for about a 24-hour recycle if we need to.
Yeah.
But
Speaking of
we're
things,
coming up.
sorry,
We're coming up just under 2 minutes away. Now hearing we might hold at that T-minus 40-second mark while they still talk through a couple of troubleshooting steps. But again, if we hold there, we can hold there for several minutes, even with all prop fully loaded on the vehicle, before we can release the hold and decide to move forward. All right, less than a minute and a half away. Again, keep your eye on the clock. Look for T-minus 40. We may hold there. It's not a rocket launch unless you're talking nonstop in the background until right before you lift off.
Once again, if we hold at T-minus 40 seconds, we have an opportunity to hold there for several minutes. This is unique to Starship. We don't have this ability on Falcon.
As we're about 15 seconds away, we did just here. We are going to hold at T-minus 40. So look for the clock to pause when we hit T-minus 40 as they finish troubleshooting. And then we'll let you know as soon as we start hearing more, and if that when that clock's gonna start rolling. So holding at T-minus 40. So the team's talking in the background, still troubleshooting, and we can hang out here for a couple of minutes. All right, and it sounds like we cleared the issue on the booster. We're now holding for a late braking issue with ship, so they're talking through that right now.
Dan, you mentioned things that we've gotten really good at. It's incredible to think that we just stacked this vehicle earlier this morning, and we're already, through prop load. Prop load's pretty much complete and ready to go. It's a very slimmed down timeline.
Yeah, this by far will be our fastest. We stacked the thing for the first time ever with these vehicles less than 24 hours ago. We really want to get to a point where we can, fly rapidly, fly as quickly as possible, and so this is definitely a case to try and push that forward. No wet dress or anything like that with these vehicles.
Absolutely. And should this booster come back for a successful landing, you were talking about the rapid part of rapid reusability. This booster may fly on a future Starship flight if we're able to catch it and bring it back online. So for those of you that have just recently joined us, we have paused at T-minus 40 seconds just to assess and work through a problem that popped up in the countdown, and we are holding here as the teams troubleshoot it. We believe that we have put in a solution and we will be able to proceed, but we have some chatter on some nets indicating that we're just holding here for a few more seconds. Now, this is a great opportunity for the teams. This is unique on Starship. We don't have this ability on Falcon to hold here, partially because there's just so much propellant that it takes longer as a whole for it to cool down with that amount of volume that we have compared to the Falcon vehicle. But this T-minus 40-second hold is pretty cool because basically everything that would have been a scrub is actually just an opportunity to hold here and work through it. Or I should say many things, not everything. Like I said, we're working through an issue now, but we can also pause here for final checkouts or completion of pressurization to get up to flight levels, that kind of thing. So it's a nice feature to allow the team to wait for final checkouts or assess final prop levels or engine health and that kind of stuff.
All right, and if you're just tuning in, we are still holding at this T-minus 40-second gate. We cleared an issue on the booster that we were working up until the hold, still working one on ship, and team still continuing to discuss in the background. We can still hold here for several more minutes. If we're not able to resolve the issue or find a workaround, then we would have to essentially scrub and stand down for the day. If that does happen, we can go as early as tomorrow, but that clearly depends on what work we might need to do to fix any issues. So just obviously stay tuned. But right now, we're a little over 5 minutes into this hold today. We've got a couple more minutes that we can hold at T-minus 40 before we have to kick out. Essentially, looking at a lot of those propellant temperatures on both vehicles, you want those to stay in pretty specific ranges for engine startup and things like that. That's what generally drives how long we can hold at T-minus 40. So still hanging out. As soon as we hear an update on the ship, we will let you know. Starting to sound like we might have a decision real soon. All right, you see the clock rolling. it is time to go for launch. So 30 seconds to go. Oh. And we just heard a hold. So we kicked. Psych. No. So we did kick out back to the T-minus 40 hold. All right, so as we started counting back down, we did trip a few more holds automatically from the booster itself. So we are now going to hang out here again at T-minus 40. They've got a couple more troubleshooting steps that they can take. If we're able to get through that, we can start counting down again. If not, we could always offload and try again on either tomorrow or another day. But right now, we're not done for the day yet. Still holding at T-minus 40 seconds. And as soon as we hear some more or start seeing that clock move, you will know if we're going to go for our launch attempt today or if we just try it again another day. So keep listening in, and we'll have an update shortly.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at some incredible views from Starbase as they continue to work through. Are they going to be able to fly here today? We are still holding at T-minus 40 seconds as they work through issues. It sounds like they had some issues on the booster, fixed them, then had some on the ship, fixed those, and then they tripped some more on the booster. So we'll have to see what happens here today.
All right, and we did just hear the call. We are going to offload for today. So we had a couple of holds trip as we started counting down from T-minus 40 again. And it's not something we can change with small config tweaks. So we are going to offload our prop and then try again another day. So we're able to fully tank the vehicle. We're unable to lift off today. But just because we don't go today doesn't mean we're not going to go tomorrow or one of the days coming up. So we are going to start offloading all of that propellant on the booster and the ship. As we talked a little bit earlier, we can go as soon as 24 hours later. We won't know that for sure until we dig into everything that kicked us out of our attempt today. So obviously just keep an eye on all of our updates. So we are expecting could be about 24 hours, but we will definitely let people know.
Yeah. So we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Unfortunately, we would have liked to lift off today, but the teams are doing the right thing and standing down while we troubleshoot, and we'll share more information as it becomes available, including when our next launch opportunity is. So be sure to keep an eye on our SpaceX account on X, and as I said, we'll share more information as it becomes available.
All right. Thanks all for joining us today. We'll see you at the next attempt.
And there we go. An official scrub has been called, and that is going to do it for today's launch attempt of Starship Flight 8. If you haven't yet, before you head out, hit the subscribe button so you can come back and join us. Hopefully, we will have clearer cameras, less fog on the next launch attempt, as I said, as soon as tomorrow. But I'd expect us to hear something in the next few hours. They're going to have to detank. They have to check that they have enough propellant still in all those tanks to be able to go for another attempt tomorrow. The fact that they didn't activate the water deluge system is one less thing that they would have to top off on. But that is going to be a wrap for today's launch attempt. No direct notice on what the issue is with booster, but it is something that they're going to want to take some more time to look into. Now, if you were joining us a little bit late, SpaceX did make quite a large announcement on the future of Starship operations here on the Space Coast. We just dropped a new article breaking all of that down. Gigafactory and Star Factory coming to Florida. Launch development at LC-39A, looking to develop at Slick 37, and what all that future would look like. So definitely take a moment, head over to the link that's in the chat, and check out those latest developments. At the same time, you can head over to our shop and order your TLP Starship launch gear to have in time for Flight 9. But unfortunately, not going to be able to go today, and we'll have to see what the next launch opportunity comes when announced. Looking at the schedule, looking ahead, we do have a Starlink 12-21 set to launch on Wednesday at 1 a.m. Eastern Time from here on the Space Coast. Sphere X targeting now Thursday at 10:09 p.m. Eastern from Vandenberg. And then we got Starlink, Transporter, crew missions, and more. Stay up to date with the latest at tlpnetwork.com for those launch schedules. But for now, that's going to do it for our TLP Space Coast studio. On behalf of the entire TLP crew, first, thank you to all of our mods for being in the chat and helping with that. And we will be back for another launch attempt on another day. But from our TLP Space Coast studio, my name's Zach, and we will see you next time, because space is better together.